So got it. Okay, let me click. Got it. Hey everyone. As Eric said, I'm Dave Connell. I'm the Senior Director of Digital Communications at Urban. I also have, in addition to working at Urban, I've worked at in the nonprofit digital space my entire career. I worked at the Nature Conservancy and the Ocean Conservancy prior to Urban, both in the environmental nonprofit space. So I am going to try to share my screen here, and it's always a little tough with the presentation mode. So do this, share, so folks can see my application window, right? And then if I click, all right, so are people seeing, what are people seeing? The presentation or like the okay.
You're good.
We got the presentation.
Awesome, thank you. So yes, so we are here to talk about keeping your website up to date. And as I said, my name is Dave Connell. I'm the Director of Digital Communications for Urban Institute. And I'm happy to share with you some thoughts today on keeping your website up to date and digital content. I have a few slides. Then hopefully we'll have some time, even with the short start or late start, to answer some questions. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about defining our audience, keeping content fresh and content creation, managing your website and leveraging your website for action. I'm going to talk a bit about creating guidelines and infrastructure throughout this presentation, because I think that's something that's often overlooked in website management and content creation. When we have the right guidelines, when we have the right infrastructure in place, it makes it a lot easier to create content and run a website, because everyone is hopefully on level playing field and has set expectations. So the next slide is on defining your audience. So when we define an audience at Urban, we talk a lot about audience personas. Audience personas are representative profiles of similar people in a target audience, and they can help you figure out how to reach people on a more personal level while delivering the right message at the right time in the right place. So when you create an audience persona, you're looking at things like their background, what's their age, what's their occupation, their education level, where they are in the world, their interests, social media usage, how are they connected to your organization? Are they a first-time site visitor? Do they subscribe to your newsletters? Have they attended an event? Are they a social media follower? That type of thing. Are they a donor? That type of thing. As you create an audience persona, you can also work through the journey of that audience member, of that audience class. What are they looking for when they come to the site? How do they come to your site? What do they do when they get there? What do you want them to do next? And there's loads of ways to create these audience personas. If you Google audience persona worksheet or audience persona template, you're going to see loads and loads of examples of this. I prefer a straight narrative document. This is a screenshot of a document that I'll share with folks through Eric after we're done with the presentation, of one that we've done here at Urban. So you can see where we're just collecting this information and really describing it in a narrative way. And I think it's important, again, to remember that an audience persona is a representational tool, and it's used by writers and communicators to help remind them of their audience. It's not a qualitative exercise. You're not trying to cover all your bases, but you're really trying to have that vision, that visual of somebody in your mind when you're creating a communication tool. We've had loads of time at Urban to collect and figure out who our audiences are. And if you have questions about your audience or don't know who your audience are, I think there's lots of ways to find out. We do donor and stakeholder interviews at Urban all the time, where we talk to folks who use our site, use our materials. Why do they come to Urban? What is it about Urban that they're looking for? How do they navigate through the site? Are they able to find the things that they need? Online surveys are a great tool as well. SurveyMonkey is still out there. You can still create a SurveyMonkey tool for free. Google Forms has a great surveying tool as well. You can send out surveys through your newsletters, asking a few questions about how people use the site. People do actually fill those out, and they can be really valuable. There's website feedback mechanisms as well. We use a service called Hotjar at Urban. It's great, really great for nonprofits. They have very good nonprofit pricing. It puts a little bug on your site that says feedback or tell us more or something like that. You can ask questions there. You can do short surveys, you can do a rating, and you can collect just sort of general feedback. It's a great way to sort of get some stuff from your audience as you go. And then analytics as well, Google Analytics and Newsletter Analytics. You can tell a lot about your audience by how they come to your site, how they navigate through your site, how long they're on the site, when they leave. Google Analytics has some demographic and some location analytics as well in it. And Google Analytics is free. There's a little bit of setup on the back end, but it's a free service that you can use to find out how folks are using your site. So keeping content fresh. And so here we're really talking about creating new content. And mostly what I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about like an organizational blog, for lack of a better term. Creating articles, creating content that can be used as a valuable way for bringing audiences back to the website. Regular content creation can create search engine optimization. And if you have questions about that, we can talk about that after the presentation as well. It can, creating regular content is something that you can use to market through newsletters, through social media. It's a great way to just get people sort of engaged with the site, get them coming back. A lot of times your newsletter can serve as your content engine as well. So you can create content that serves both purposes. So for an example, at Urban, we have our president's letter from Sarah Wartell, which is really a blog post that she writes, and we have a blog that's for her, and that content goes there, and then we email it out as a newsletter to her key audiences and to donors. And so it's something that can serve dual purposes and happens on a regular basis. So it's a good way to create content. So when you're thinking about creating content for your site, you want to think about creating a manageable and replicable cadence that fits both your audience needs and really, this should be underlined, not in parentheses, but your staff capacity. Staff capacity is really, really important. Set expectations in a way that that works for your staff, and make sure if you're starting to create content on a regular basis, I would aim for less frequency and build your way up, right? So I have daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal here. Do it in a way that is doesn't tax your staff and is manageable and replicable. So defining content types. So there's lots of different content that you can do on a website, and this is a fun part for our team. This is when we kind of get together with whomever is going to be working with us on content creation, and we do some brainstorming on the types of content we might want to create. I have 6 things listed here, but this is really just a tip of the iceberg for content creation. I really like Q&As, and these are written Q&As, sort of like the 5 questions with type of model. And you can do these with constituents, donors, employees, folks who use your services. And I like those because they're personal. You can have it's a personal piece of content. You can have a photo of the person there, and they're pretty straightforward to produce. You write the question down, you edit the answers down to something that's easily digested. There's not a lot of narrative there. I like in the news as well, because in the news sections, they do 2 things. It's easy to create. This is so like if a newspaper or website cites your organization and writes an article about your organization, you can write a summary of that, post it to your website. It's easy to create and creates really good third-party validation. The in the news sections are really great for that, and they also, again, they create linkages back to your site for search engine optimization. Sorry, next slide. So defining your guidelines for creating new content. Again, we don't want to start with a blank sheet of paper here. We don't want to just say like, hey, we're going to have a blog, like start writing. We want to have guidelines and criteria for the content that we're creating on the site. These are some of the questions that we've answered as we've built the strategy for our Urban Wire blog on Urban. And I'll provide a copy of those guidelines after this presentation. But, you know, answering questions like, why are we creating this content? Who's the audience for this content? What's the style of the content and the criteria? What action do we want readers to take, either through the content itself? Are we writing content that the reader is going to use to take an action? Or are we asking them to make a donation at the end? Are we asking them to join a newsletter list at the end? Are we asking them to take a policy action at the end? What do we want them to do with that content? And even like things like, how is the content submitted? How is it edited and ultimately posted to the site? Who's in charge of these things, and how does that process work? Again, if we can define these before we start creating content, I think it makes the content creation process much smoother, because everyone's on the same page as far as what the mission of that content is and where it's ultimately going to end up. Just a quick note on how digital content is different from written, printed content. When folks read on the internet, I always say, like, nobody reads on the internet, everybody scans on the internet. And that's, unfortunately the case. And a lot of times a user will scan first and read later. A mobile user will scroll down to the bottom, almost reflexively scroll down to the bottom of an article and then scroll back up to see how long it is. There's have been loads of studies with doing eye tracking that show that people scan digital content in an F pattern. So they look at the title, then they immediately go down and they look for other bolded pieces of content. So things that are really important when writing for the web are subheads, bullets, links, highlighted text, highlighting text even in the middle of a paragraph that's important that you want your readers to see. Might seem really weird to do in a printed environment, but are actually really important in a digital environment. And then this last thing, the average time on page for the internet, and take this with a grain of salt because it's like every web page in the internet, is 54 seconds. So not a ton of time. So it's important, I think, to keep content short, to keep it scannable, and to have have visuals and stuff to attract people's attention as you can. So managing a website. So here I'm gonna talk pretty briefly about this, because I think every website is different. Every website has different sections, different needs and different applications. But for me, this is sort of an outline of how I think of an update schedule. So for the homepage, I think about the homepage as the poster board for what we're doing right now, and what we want users or visitors to know about us right now. We want to have a prominent call to action based on the news cycle or the season or whatever we're doing at Urban at this time. We want to have a selection of fresh content, either from a blog, a press room, events, that in the news thing that I was talking about, something that shows the visitor that this site has been updated recently, right? And it should have like a date next to it, that type of thing. And then we want to have evergreen calls to action, like newsletter signups, donation buttons, something that's going to get the user to take an action. The homepage is our advertisement for the rest of the website, and it's our advertisement for the organization. So we want it to be fresh, and we want it to speak to the moment. I like to have new content on our homepage a couple times a week, or at least weekly. Again, staff capacity is the elephant in the room here. So I think you have to do what's right for your organization. About pages. So about pages, I think, are really interesting. A lot of organizations will set up their about section when they first do their website or when they redesign their website, and then they'll kind of forget about them. This is really core content that defines your organization, its mission, its staff, etc. It often gets overlooked, and it's really important to look at the about pages at least once a year, if not more frequently. And that's because, this is where folks are going to go after they get through that homepage, right? They're going to, if they're coming to your organization for the first time, they're going to want to learn about your organization. You want that to be up to date. Landing pages, here I'm thinking about some informational pages about programs and priorities. These are often evergreen, but they should be reviewed often. I have quarterly here, but again, it's kind of up to staffing. What's a priority in Q1 might not be a priority in Q3, or might not be as big a priority in Q3. Calls to action, these are your donate and newsletter sign up pages. I think, we should be changing these with our campaigns, and every time we have a new campaign, we should refresh these to reflect that campaign. And we should be looking at conversion analytics as well. Are people coming to a donation page and making a donation? If not, why not? And trying to change them based on that. And then finally, the content pages, these are the blog posts and articles I talked about earlier. Usually these are sort of, you write them and then they're done. It's good to review them periodically. There might be some out-of-date language, some out-of-date ideas there that maybe doesn't pertain to your organization anymore. So I do recommend sort of going back and reading through some of that content. And then the last bit here is just to sort of talk about defining your funnel, and using the website for action. And then, so this is really moving the user from coming to your website down to joining your community. So you want to make sure that folks can find your site through search engines, social media accounts, that type of thing. Newsletters, I think, are a great way to bring content directly to your audience and ask them to take action or donate. I am a huge believer in newsletters. I think newsletters will never go out of style. They've always been in style for websites, and I think they're just fantastic. It's something that you deliver directly to your visitors. You own it. Elon Musk will never be in charge of your newsletter. Your newsletter will never be used to spy on or change an election for the bad, maybe for the good, but it's something that you own. And I think it's something that's really important. Take action. This is sort of hearkening back to my environmental career. This was always our fulcrum point. So when we really wanted to get somebody involved, having them take action, whether it was through a tip or through a survey or writing to their member of Congress, that was always a fulcrum point at the beginning of a donation campaign that really helped them flip to a donor. When somebody takes an action for your organization, they feel invested. Donation asks should be simple, straightforward. There should be a value proposition. I'm a big believer in predefined donor amounts and online payment integrations, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Wallet, anything that can reduce friction on a donor form is great. And then obviously join and volunteer. And this is where, you create those lasting connections with people, and the funnel kind of moves offline. So I just wanted to use the NAACP website as a quick example. This is a recently redesigned site. And there's a few things that I think, speak to the presentation. So they have some fresh content here that speaks to the news cycle and the issues of the day. They get bonus points for repurposing a press statement, like on their homepage. It's a great way to just have some fresh content that serves dual purposes. They keep their homepage updated with like a really beautiful and powerful statement on their priority issue of the week. Obviously, gearing up towards the election here. They have clear entry points on all of their all points of their funnel. So they've got engage here with the social. They have a great take action section. And if you have a chance, you should go here and look at this, because when you click on this page, there's a bunch of actions folks can take, and they actually have little timestamps on them that show like how long it takes to do the action, which I think is really clever. They obviously have a donate here in the nav, and then the join the NAACP here as well. I think the one missed opportunity that I would say, so this is the top half of their homepage, and then they have a second half that has some additional content. The one thing they're missing on this top half is an email sign up. And I would, if I worked here, I would say we should have an email sign up, like maybe right next to donate or somewhere else on the nav. So I think that's a missed opportunity, but they do have it in the footer of the website. So this is a great example, sort of ties together a lot of the things that I've talked about. That's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry, I had to sort of rush through that a little bit, but I wanted to leave some time for questions.
Thanks so much, Dave. I did see an excellent question in the chat. So Nara, so they're a health center, and so their website has additional audience of patients. So how do you serve multiple audiences simultaneously?
Yes, that is a great question. So for that, I think that even having, I think being really straightforward about that is a great way to do that. And we don't do this at Urban, but I've seen a lot of sites where they have like very specifically called out sections for patients, for policymakers, that type of thing, and bringing that content into that area so that folks can find it and find it easily. So that's, I mean, to be honest with you, I think that's how I would do it. And I would have, you know, a specific newsletter for patients if you have the capacity to do that. At Urban, we have a lot of different audiences as well, and we create content for the various audiences, and then push it out through different channels to those audiences that they use. So if you know that patients are using Facebook, for example, creating content for a blog post, and then publishing it, you know, pushing it out through Facebook that says, you know, that very clearly calls out that it's for patients might be a good idea as well.
Okay. I'm going to launch a very quick satisfaction poll. And again, I want to apologize for our tech issues. But Dave, do you have like 5 or 10 more minutes that we can hang around, maybe ask some questions? Or do you have to run? If not, we can take them in the chat and we can respond via email.
Yeah, I unfortunately have a 3 o'clock.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go. I do want to capture Jackson's email here. How to manage and track content that can quickly go out of date, to use any tools for this. I really recommend a tool called Trello, which is a great way to track not only content that you have coming up, but content that you've published. And it's a very easy content, content calendar, and it has a lot of great uses. So Jackson, I would look at Trello for that. All right,
Excellent.
hey, Eric, I'm gonna jump, but if you do get questions,
we'll pass them along.
And I also will PDF the presentation and PDF those handouts and get them to you so you can post them to the site.
Perfect, yeah, and we'll also email that out to everybody.
Cool, thanks everybody. So sorry
so much,
that
David.
I have to run. I appreciate your time, and good luck.
Thanks, Dave. And Eric and I will stay on a few more minutes if folks want to just chat their question before they go. And you know how to reach us. So you can always send us questions that way. And we know how to reach Dave because he's a colleague. So really appreciate everyone sticking with us through technical issues. It's my first time trying a 30-minute session. And of course, it was the one that we had to start a little late. So yeah. Appreciate everyone's time. Have a good rest of your afternoon.